USC quarterback Caleb Williams is a huge value in your dynasty leagues. We will explain why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Behind the Steel Curtain and Pro Football Focus. On today's show, we are starting our 2024 NFL Draft player prospect previews. That's a lot of P's all written in a row. And of course, we're starting with Caleb Williams, quarterback from USC, who is widely believed to be the number one pick in this year's draft. Kate, let's talk about the player, film notes, the analytics, and then of course where his value is in dynasty leagues. What did you see from him when you watched him on tape?
Caleb Williams, he's a little bit of a magician all over field. I think the one word you can use to describe Caleb Williams, and it's the perfect word, is creative. He is a gamer. The play is absolutely never over. It doesn't matter if you have five guys rushing him and they're all within an inch. Caleb Williams is poised. He is electric, and he finds ways to get the ball out. Now, Marcus, I will say, for as much as that is his greatest strength for me, it was also at times a point of weakness, right? Because the play is never over, had a little bit of that tendency to play, some hero ball. But the amazing thing is he's got incredible arm talent. And because of that arm talent, and I think, because of just some natural athletic ability, he's a threat on the ground. He's not a runner like a guy you're going to use necessarily a ton on designed runs like a Lamar Jackson.
But you can if you want
to. You have the flexibility to do it because of his arm talent being such an immense threat. I mean, it didn't matter if he was in the pocket. When he was flushed outside the pocket, he was almost an even better passer, I think. The thing is, because of the threat that he poses with his arms, even under duress, outside of the pocket, you can never discount the fact that he is going to opt for a throw on the run versus a scramble. Because of all of these factors culminating kind of perfectly, you ended up having a pretty productive rushing career from Caleb Williams, 10 plus rushing touchdowns in each of the last two seasons out of USC. And Marcus, he's young, right? He's a young guy. He's a true junior. But I gotta say, all in all, it's really not that hard to see why Caleb Williams is the consensus number one overall pick.
I've gotten the ability to watch Caleb Williams a lot over the last 5 or 6 years, even going back to high school when he was playing at Gonzaga College out there in DC. And then he signed with the Oklahoma Sooners, which is my school. I remember the first game that he played where he replaced Spencer Rattler, came in and looked amazing. He's a joy to watch. He is so much fun to watch because he just plays the quarterback position different than just about everybody in the league. It's truly a backyard style of football, but he can play in rhythm. He throws the ball on time. He's so accurate. I'm a huge fan. And by the way, we're going to be talking about all these quarterbacks in this class, and including Drake May and Jaden Daniels. To me, he's been the clear-cut first quarterback to be drafted, the number one overall pick for 4 years in my mind. I just think his game is going to translate really well to the NFL. But you mentioned some of the concerns, he's not the biggest quarterback in the league. He came in at 6'1". He's not the most athletic. He's not going to run a 4.55. Does he take a lot of sacks and does he have a lot of fumbles? Absolutely. We're going to get to some of that stuff in a little bit. but he's just a maestro when it comes to knowing how to win on the football field and how to put up numbers and how to throw guys open and how one of the crazy things that I saw USC do, and this is getting really football nerdy, but that's okay. They would have their offensive line have the widest splits I've ever seen because they knew that Caleb Williams was going to be able to figure out a way to make guys miss in the pocket and then make big throws down the field. I'm just amazed whenever I watch him play. He's truly a generational prospect in my mind.
I love the word that you just used to describe Caleb Williams. He's a maestro. And I think that perfectly encapsulates a lot of his strengths. So I mentioned the creativity. I mentioned the play that or the moment, the fact that there's never a moment where defenses can back off and say the play is over until the play is whistled dead. I mean, there's no question about that. The arm talent is nuts. The types of throws that he can make off platform are just insane. But Marcus, I think a maestro of playing football is a perfect way to describe him because all of those things come together in what I think is just such a natural feel for the quarterback position. It comes so innately to him.
Yes.
Watching his ability to navigate the pocket and not just navigate the pocket with movement, but to have a true feel of the pocket at 21 years old. He looks like he has been playing football for the past 20 years, the way that he just can sense pressure and not just
It's crazy.
sense pressure, navigate the pressure and also just be unfazed by it mentally.
Yep.
It's all incredible.
Can I add in something really quickly here about the arm talent? Because I think that sometimes gets confused with how far or how hard you can throw the ball. Because like Joe Milton at the combine, we saw him throw a 75-yard dime down the field.
For those of you that didn't watch this, by the way, he not just threw a 70-yard dime. This wide receiver took off on the route and he had to sit back and wait because he's like, I know this ball is going to go really far. And if I launch it now, he's not going to get there in time. So Joe Milton, arm strength 100%. But yeah, please.
For me, arm talent, obviously that matters, like how hard you can throw the ball and how far. But there's certain things that Caleb Williams can do that just other quarterbacks can't do. I'll give you a perfect example. USC ran a ton of screens, wide receiver screens. And in order for a wide receiver screen to work out well, the quarterback's got to get rid of the ball quickly. Caleb can grab a football without the laces and throw it just as accurately as he does with the laces. And I know that doesn't seem like a big thing, but it really is. That little split second of him having to or not having to grab the laces makes the difference on whether a screen goes for no yards or 7 yards. There's also times where he's scrambling to his left and he can flip his hips and throw the ball going to the sideline on the run. He just does some things athletically that only a few quarterbacks in the league can do. I mean, obviously, I think Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen can do a lot of these same things, but that list is pretty small when you include how accurate they are at the same time. He is just so incredibly gifted with his arm that it's hard for me to see him failing in the NFL.
That is a really good point, the arm talent bit, because I do think arm strength and arm talent, I think a lot of arm talent or what encompasses arm talent is the ability to also have a feel for velocity and touch. And all of those things just seem to come so naturally to Caleb Williams.
All right, let's talk about some of the numbers, because depending on what you value in terms of analytics, you can paint it, or you can tell yourself a story that Caleb's either going to be the next Patrick Mahomes or maybe the next first overall bust. Let's get to that next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fastest and the easiest way to buy tickets for all of the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seats before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total upfront so you know that you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We want to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, Kay, let's get a little nerdy here and dive into the numbers. What were some of the most telling analytics that you found when researching Caleb Williams?
One thing that I think just pops off right off the page. I mean, all of his advanced metrics, courtesy of PFF, over the last 2 seasons, a 94.7 clean pocket grade, which for those of you wondering, like, throwing under pressure, incredibly important skill to be able to have. But because of the fact that pressure is inconsistent, it's not necessarily as predictive of a stat as what you're doing in a clean pocket. Your ability to make plays in a clean pocket, that is generally a little bit more indicative of the quarterback himself versus some of those other extraneous factors. So you love to see a high clean pocket grade. 96.1 PFF passing grade on throws at or behind the sticks. 93 PFF passing grade on no play action. 94 PFF passing grade on 3rd and 4th downs, which the 3rd and 4th downs pretty dang important, Marcus. Like you need a quarterback that can make those critical and important plays. And I mean, you look at that and almost all of those metrics, I believe all of them 85th percentile or higher in over the past 2 seasons in the NCAA.
Mm-hmm.
He does so many of these skills that are very important and translate fairly well to predictive success. He dominates them.
I'm really glad that you included the non-play action numbers because we know in the NFL, play action is a cheat code. I believe the numbers this year alone were that quarterbacks across the NFL had a passer rating of about 100 when using play action. When not, it was like down to 80. It's just such a wild drop off. But one of the things that you see is the quarterbacks that are really good, like the really elite quarterbacks, can still produce when they're not given the crutch of a handicap or the crutch of a play action pass, right? Caleb Williams thrives in that 94th percentile, 6th in the country in PFF grade. I just love that he can run a whole offense regardless of what the offense is. Like if you put him in a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay offense that's just going to spam play action, he's going to be awesome. If you put him in a more traditional offense like the Raiders or maybe Dallas, it doesn't use play action, he's going to be great there too. So that's one of the key stats for me is how do you perform without play action passes? And as we've seen with Caleb Williams, he's been elite.
I think it just gives the whatever team that drafts him a lot of flexibility in terms of play calling. You don't necessarily need to tailor a specific scheme to Caleb Williams. I think he can do a little bit of everything, which are there some things he does better than others? Yes. But like having that flexibility to be open with your playbook because of that versatile skill set is something you can't do with every single
Yeah.
quarterback. And I think that's so important. Now, we've talked a lot about his strengths. I want to talk about a couple of weaknesses that popped off the page. Let's talk about the turnovers for Caleb
Yeah.
Williams, which
Yeah.
have been relatively problematic. 22 fumbles over the last 2 seasons. And I think we can talk a lot about maybe what is the root cause of those fumbles. I think sometimes that kind of results from the never letting the play die
That's a big
kind of
part of it. Yep.
mentality, like, which again, strength, but kind of a weakness.
Yeah, we should also mention that we see a lot of the quarterbacks in the NFL that struggle with fumbles in college also struggle with it in the NFL, partly because the ball is a little bit bigger in the NFL and it takes some time to get used to that. I really do think it's because he just tries to make every play a big play. That's something he's going to have to work on. Just take the layups when they're there for you. Don't turn, not every play needs to be a 50-yard bomb down the field, which goes to another concern for me. One of the things that we've seen Kate translate really well is sack percentage, right? If you take a lot of
Mhm.
sacks in college, you're likely going to take a lot of sacks in the NFL. Look at Justin Fields, right? Like that's a perfect example. I'm a little bit nervous about Caleb Williams in the NFL the same way. 6.4% sack rate over the last 2 years. That is 20th percentile among all college quarterbacks. I'm going to give him a little bit of a pass because his offensive line is not good. Like over the last 2 years, they've had one guy drafted, Andrew Voris, who was a 7th-round pick. The offensive line is terrible, and Lincoln Riley did not do a lot to help him there. But I got to admit, it is one of the concerns, especially right away. I won't be surprised if Caleb Williams leads the NFL in fumbles as a rookie.
I think that's very fair. Although to counter your point regarding offensive line, I don't know that there are any teams in the mix to potentially trade up for Caleb Williams that have like a great offensive line. Like let's say he goes to the Bears. I don't think that's an ideal situation. Obviously,
It's not bad,
they have
though. It's not
they have
terrible.
some draft capital to play with. There are some interesting agent names. So like that offensive line could look very, very different here in the coming season. But not just the sack rate, Marcus, the pressure to sack rate. How many of those pressures actually translated to sacks, which has been, kind of a signature stat from PFF. And it's translated really well to kind of predicting what we might expect from these guys in the future. Among the 95 quarterbacks in the FBS with 300 plus dropbacks, Caleb Williams had the 18th highest pressure to sack conversion rate in that cohort. Again, not something that you're going to point to and say that he can't improve upon, but generally a pretty predictive stat of how much is the quarterback responsible for some of these sacks. And I also think that the goods outweigh the bad. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
we can nitpick all we want, but
I'm willing to gamble on Caleb Williams because he's so good at creating big plays and because he can do so much on 3rd and 4th down when you absolutely need it. But yeah, it's something in his game that he's going to have to clean up. Like he can't take this many sacks. He can't fumble the ball this often. You mentioned the Bears offensive line. Listen, that's where Caleb Williams is going. Is it a top 10 offensive line? No. But is it a bad offensive line? No, I don't think so either. I think Justin Fields made that offensive line look a lot worse than what it actually is. We'll see if Caleb Williams can fix that. But I think it's a neutral landing spot in terms of the offensive line. Where it's going to be good for him is the weapons. When you get DJ Moore, you have Cole Kmet, you have a run game, and I think they're going to draft a receiver with that second first-round pick. I think that's why I'm all in on Caleb Williams being a screaming value in your dynasty leagues. All right, Kay, let's talk about Caleb Williams' dynasty value and who he best compares to in the NFL. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar that you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you can transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That is right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of your 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. On tomorrow's show, we're going to be breaking down Drake May, who is widely viewed as QB2 in this class, so make sure you tune in for that. But, Kate, let's talk about his current Dynasty value, because on Dynasty League Football, he is being drafted as QB 13, 105th overall. I think that's a screaming value. What do you think?
I think it's a screaming value, although I will say in super flex leagues, it seems like people are a little bit more caught up on the
Yes.
juju here because we've got Caleb Williams coming in a QB9 in super flex. So super flex crowd, maybe a little bit more bullish on Caleb Williams than the rest. But I mean, Marcus, there are 11 players that are being drafted ahead of Caleb Williams in super flex leagues, including 0 running backs in the latest batch of Dynasty ADP.
Which makes sense. I mean, the quarterbacks just hold the value the longest. I get
very, very fair. Yeah, we've got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Anthony Richardson, and then we've got 3 wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase. And then last but not least, we have Caleb Williams. So I'm curious, where does Caleb Williams fall in that stack? Because I do think that's 100% the tier. It's just a matter of where does Caleb Williams fall within that tier for you?
He's a top 6 player for me overall. I think he should be ahead of all the receivers. I don't get why he's being drafted behind Anthony Richardson, and this is why I think he's a huge value. Anthony Richardson played 4 games last year, and now he's coming off shoulder surgery, right? I know that the rushing upside is so much better than what Caleb offers. I get it. But Caleb is the better quarterback. He's the better prospect. I think he's going to have more success right away, and I think he's just going to be far more durable. I'm looking at the list right now and thinking, okay, CJ Stroud or Caleb Williams. I probably lean CJ Stroud because he's already in a good offense and we've already seen it happen, right? Good. Jalen Hurts. I'd rather just have Caleb Williams and Jalen Hurts. I know the rushing upside for Jalen Hurts. Caleb Williams is going to be a better quarterback in the NFL. So for me, he is a top 6 player, and I think you can argue that he should be even higher than what he's being drafted right now. And then in standard 1 QB leagues, you're getting him out to the top 12 quarterbacks. That is ludicrous to me. Like, he should be a top 8 quarterback all day long. He is a massive value.
Here's what I kind of think is an interesting tiebreaker, because I think Caleb Williams has definitely a lot more arm talent than like an Anthony Richardson. We know Anthony Richardson has arm strength. He can throw down the field, but accuracy has been an issue for Anthony Richardson. I think Caleb Williams has the better arm. And though Anthony Richardson, kind of the pinnacle of his game is that mobility, that rushing upside, again, because of Caleb Williams' kind of natural athleticism, though he isn't the athlete that Anthony Richardson is, he still offers a lot of that same upside. I mean, he's not going to be Kirk Cousins there just standing in the pocket.
No.
Like, he is going to pose that threat in the second level all day long. And I think like Caleb Williams, for what it's worth, really, I think is just a very complete player. And thinking of him as this complete player at the age of 21 is just kind of this daunting prospect of like, holy crap, what could he be in 5 years from now?
So my NFL comparison for him has always been Aaron Rodgers. And I think there's a chance he could put up Aaron Rodgers like numbers. And especially, Kate, if you look at like the first couple years that Aaron Rodgers started in the NFL, he was rushing for 350 yards and 5 touchdowns. Like in 2010, 356 yards, 4 touchdowns. 2009, 316 yards, 5 touchdowns. 2015, 344 yards. 2016, 370 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think that's going to be like what he does on the ground. He's going to vulture some red zone touch-ins. He's going to give you at least a little nice floor of rushing yards every game. But he's a much better than runner than what Rodgers was coming out of school. I think the play style is very similar. Rodgers took a lot of sacks early in his career, still takes a lot of sacks, but you make up for it with the downfield passing. Both guys 6'2" and under, both incredibly athletic. Both are so good inside the pocket. I think Caleb Williams is the next Aaron Rodgers.
Both prospects, you said 6'2" or lower, but you know what? For as much knock as we're going to give Caleb Williams on that size, let's not forget those 9 3/4 inch hands, 61st percentile. So
It matters.
what do you makes up for in height and weight? We're not going to blame all of these fumbles on his hand size. I think that's a very good comp, but I'm going to counter you a little bit, Marcus, and say that like the rushing stats that we saw from Aaron Rodgers early on in his career feels like it could be the floor for Caleb Williams. I think the general upside of Caleb Williams as a rusher, and particularly in this age of the NFL, like, I mean, let's not forget Aaron Rodgers was a young rook or a young quarterback a few eons ago, it seems by now. And Caleb Williams is in the era where, these dual threat offenses, much more of a sort of centerpiece of the NFL. I think you can look at Aaron Rodgers' rushing stats from early in his career and say Caleb Williams is going to match and then some every single year.
And remember, the first 4 years of Aaron Rodgers' career were spent on the bench. So we didn't even really get that many seasons of him, young Aaron Rodgers when he was really athletic. You are going to get that with Caleb Williams because he's going to be a day one starter. I agree with you. I think 350 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground is the floor. Now, I don't know. I don't think the yardage is going to be super high, but I do think it's higher than that. And I think if you're making Aaron Rodgers like the high end comp, which obviously is a high end comp, I think Tony Romo is a very middling comp. Romo was a really good quarterback for a decade. Now he struggled with injuries, but the same thing. Not a great testing athlete, not overly big, but super athletic in the pocket, could make plays, could throw off of any arm angle. I think the floor is incredibly high with Caleb Williams.
I love that. Now, before we close out the show, obviously Caleb Williams, consensus QB1. You might get a few people out here looking at LSU's Jaden Daniels with that rushing upside and that accuracy as a passer. But no, Caleb Williams, yes. QB1. I want obviously the 101 in Superflex in a rookie draft, though. I want to talk about Caleb Williams in a single quarterback rookie draft. There are a lot of talented receivers. I wouldn't put any running backs in this class ahead of Caleb Williams, because even a single quarterback league, because I believe in the prospect. I think once you have Caleb Williams, he's going to be your QB1, and great, you have that settled. But where does he fall in your rankings here in a single quarterback league? Who are you taking ahead of him in a rookie draft?
Yeah. Rookie draft, 1 QB league. I'm going the 3 receivers: Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, 1, 2, 3. And then I have Brock Bowers 4. And actually, I might even have Bowers ahead of a couple of those receivers because I think he's tight end 1 in the class. And then it's Caleb Williams. And we can debate on how he would rank against Brian Thomas or A.D. Mitchell. But for me, I would have Caleb Williams at 5 overall in a 1 QB league.
Just such a safe evaluation, I think. But we are in agreement. Caleb Williams over any of the running backs in this class,
absolutely.
Even in a single quarterback. Okay.
Without even thinking. Yeah.
Perfect.
Pretty good prospect, Caleb Williams. You're going to be very happy if you get the opportunity to draft him, and you're going to get him for the next 10 to 15 years, putting up all those fantasy points. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every single day. Go check out the YouTube channel. We've been posting videos all the time over there. Go check them out. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.